So the recording is live. I can welcome all of you to the SUSE Tools workshop. Today as a topic, Friday of a month as usual, I would like to go over the workshop topic of where we are, SUSE QE Tools roadmap. And this is a good opportunity because the last one we had about this topic was on February. So we have 2 months full of that with you. So we will go to close within the last 60 days first, talk about what had been done, presenting the noteworthy changes. And then after that, we can look into what is currently planned and what's the broader outlook for the future for the tools. So in the last 60 days, we have 175 tickets closed. Out of those, we have roughly feature requests that we worked on, which has increased in its ratio over the past months. And before, we were quite busy with the infrastructure, in particular for the last year. But now we can already see a shift there, which I think is good, because then I guess most of you are more interested in, oh, it's actually much bigger. We have the category in the different projects. Structure. Wait, I think, does it group by groups by category? Why does it show that section? Well, if I'm doing the counting right here, then it's about 90 or a little bit of support, a bit of regression and crashes. And also, if we take a look into blank, this is mostly infrastructure work. So I will go over that list from top to bottom. What we worked on is, okay, this is related to our PC. I guess I will come to that. Planned data center shutdown. Oh yeah, that one. We have this QAM dashboard, which is mostly relevant for SLE maintenance test reviewing. And in there, we had a request if you can just order that by priority. So this is done now, so that QAM dashboard is highest priority of incident first, which should make it easier for reviewers to focus on by priority and work down that list. It was originally actually planned as a Spike solution with only a 6-hour time box, so pretty limited and no guarantee at all that this feature would be finished. But sadly, that was already brought into complete, completeness of the feature, even because it's considered to be a minor feature. But as we didn't really know about the feasibility to do that, if we need to integrate the data from another data source and then be able to sort by that. But it turned out to be easy enough, so that's done. What else? Related to that, we also looked into another Spike solution of coming up with an alternative approach for working with the maintenance incident triggering, as well as reviewing that with QAM bot. And the idea there was to say, can we use synchronous actions, like whenever something happens in OBS or whenever something happens in OpenQA, react to those, because there are AMQP events on those, so we can trigger some actions on those, and we don't need to do something like continuous polling or recurring timed jobs, which we currently have in production. There was a positive result out of that Spike solution, showing that yes, something like that should be possible. But it was only the Spike solution in that case, really, so far, that showed that this is feasible, and then follow-up work is planned to either integrate that into the existing solution or coming up with an alternative which replaces that QM bot reviews cycle in general. The IT offering what is called open platform, which is kind of a new and more flexible approach for would say infrastructure as a service. So you can deploy containers or virtual machines on a cluster with the help of Harvester, and we evaluated that how or if at all we want to use it ourselves. For us, the result there was, let's say, a bit mixed. We could do that. We couldn't really find like a clear path to say whenever we want to come up with new hardware resources that platform or recommend that to all of you, but we identified some cases where it's and now that is probably really interesting for most of you as engineers, because we finally, after so many months, we managed to bring our VM testing back into OpenQA SUSE. Coincidence also, yeah, thank you. Yeah, we did a lot of waiting there and a lot of frustrating problems in trying to find the right people and coordination, but finally managed, though there are some restrictions because our piece our VM testing is back, but it's a bit limited in performance because we're still relying on something like across network. So there's certainly some more tasks that are still pending there to call something like the data center integration. That's not there yet. Oh yeah, IPv6 had been rate put by SUSE past week, and that one is just for Nuremberg 2. So now Nuremberg 2 is properly 6, as we had in Nuremberg 1 before. So we can say we are back to that state again. And for Prague 2, the equivalent is. Then one more I would like to mention. I hope it's not any that interests you. There is there are some protocols in network communication already relied upon it before, which is called STP. What's it called? Spanning Tree Protocol, which we relied on in before in our setup of cross-machine, multi-machine OpenQA network clusters. When you have one machine connected to all the others with a grid tunnel, so that the virtual machines on one can can form a network, a virtual VLAN, directly with other VMs on other hosts. But for that, you must prevent loops. For that, we use STP. But the STP protocol wasn't big enough to react to changes whenever like any of this machine going down or changing. Well, the solution by the name, there is a rapid spanning tree protocol, so which is rapid, and that one helped us, and it seems to have helped a lot. Don't have problems anymore, and if there's one machine going down, then very quick the network reacts to that. Keep distant point-to-point connection. Commissioned a bot. You can see multiple move tasks. So there were multiple machines by different loaners, but we need to take care that they are in the general QE network available. Also something like those are related, and we have multiple more which are related to bringing machines back online, and certainly Yeah, right. You can see many of what had been. Now this was for all the more infrastructure related tasks. Now I would like to request. So for example, OpenQA is using quite some JavaScript components, and that is color is a nice picture of the bot help working together up, and the notification that the color component potentially vulnerable to DOS attack. We didn't really think that this would apply to us, as in that's a vulnerability that could be exploited in the setup that we have, how we use with OpenQA. However, it was a good, like, okay, how can we, in a more structured way, ensure that we have updates to the JavaScript stack? And an important prerequisite, which was done in before, that we switched our handling of JavaScript stacks to rely on Node more possible. Now, DependerBot can help us, which bot automatically would create pull requests on OpenKey after we configured it accordingly to update certain components. And in many cases, for simple components that can work like straightforward, and in some other cases, we need to give it a little bit of help, like adjusting the style or doing more fixes related to those approvals. Can't hear you.
I'm muted.
Yep, that.
Yeah, 2
Go ahead.
minutes.
Go ahead.
So we've had similar setup on the software OpenSUSE.org. We were actually getting all the RubyGem updates as there was a bot which was watching it. But we had one big issue with that, and that was we were actually really dependent on older version of Ruby, and then suddenly a lot of pull requests were simply not applicable because the dependency that was suggested, with the CV fix was simply not building on the Ruby 2.5. Are we dependent on some older version of Node, or are we successfully upgrading like with newer versions and so on and so on, so we will not get to the same problems as with software OpenSUSE. That was pain. Like
right.
I was not able to accept like more than 50% of the updates.
Yeah, right.
Maybe that's
No,
not the case
I
here.
don't think that applies here. So we don't have the problems with our dependencies there. And
Cool.
our development reference is actually Tumbleweed, so that's why we don't have that
No
problem.
pending
And
to old nodes. Sounds good.
yeah, right. I mean, there are some cases where we see that there is actually a lot more work needed to have that acceptable. Let me show an example, but it's not related to dependencies itself, but the module. So if we take a look on open pull requests, then eventually, yeah. So you see one example here. Bump data tables in
Right.
XPS4 from this version to that one. The eye tests are failing there. So this is why we need to apply manual help. And also, for example, Bootstrap. That will certainly be a bigger change. And that's not just, tiny visual impact, but
But it
how
helps you to
we use
improve
it.
code, right? Generally. So that's good actually.
Yeah. But to show multiple examples where it worked in the past, so you could, yeah. So this was thanks to contribution by Liv here, who helped to align the JavaScript source code style to the version so that we can actually use the new. Yeah, I think that one was like, it just acted on its own. So we have the complete automation. We just see the pull request, we can review it, or we can just leave it. And then another component emoji file will, after a waiting time, automate that patch level. So yeah.
Thank you.
Let's see here. What level there? Identify reproducible infrastructure if they investigate. And I would like to show an example there. So, yeah, but we can be able to find from those jobs. So, the OpenK investigate comments. And this is one example where you see automatic investigation jobs. And in case, for example, if try or well, if retry passes in all the other passes as well, then there would be a comment that this is a sporadic issue that's probably already apparent in the source code from all the time, acted on by the test writers accordingly. In the case we have a clear indication, like if tests or the build are the source of the problem, then we would also like a summary comment accordingly. Cases like those, say all investigation jobs failed, this is likely an issue with the test environment. In the test environment, I mean, originally we thought it's like, okay, we can clearly identify infrastructure issue, but maybe that's a bit too kind of narrow. So we actually thought some examples of what test environment could be. Of course, those could be settings, or it could be external resource. So think about if download OpenSUSE.org not available, then on a tumbleweed test, it wouldn't have that impact, but this is a 15.5 backwards incident test. That one relies on the official repositories from download.OpenSUSE.org is not available, then this is an external reason, preventing that properly. This comment. The next step after that could be to apply a bit more automation and actually, forward that message over a separate notification channel, depending on what the result of the evaluation is. Like if it's an infrastructure or if it's a product issue, the test. Oh yeah, that one. Trigger OpenGate as mentioned in GitHub description is part of the CI. So, we have OpenGate integrated in GitHub pull requests already. And we have a new feature, and you can see one example test pull request here showing that feature. So with a comment in the GitHub description, you can, if the repositories are configured accordingly, and towards audience history is configured this way that on every pull request, OpenGate tests are automatically triggered and executed and evaluated for that pull request using the test code of the pull request. But what we do, we select something like, let's say, the default scenario. But consider you do a change in a code area which is really specific, like let's say for WSL. Then probably you want to have a WSL test scenario cloned as part of the verification. And normally what reviewers would do, they would like ask the reviewees like, hey, could you run a verification run for this or that, or the author then would include it automatically and maybe mention that in the description. Now what's possible is that you can actually ask OpenQA to do that. Like you tell, hey, OpenQA, can you please clone that job? And then you will find, I don't see the details here of the CI. Let me see here. Yeah, but it must be, it's visible somewhere. I think it's more visible in a still open pull request, and that you can try to use.
That actually very much goes to what I was just talking with Santi yesterday about the VRs that are just not being verified if they actually passed. I think you have seen the comments.
Yes, I have seen your comments there. Well,
So if this one now ends up in checks, then it's actually blocking the merge automatically, which would be exactly what we were after.
exactly. In that case, it would be more explicit. But let me tell you, so far the feedback isn't perfect yet. But let's, I'm just checking any random open pull request with already finished checks. And what we have here is we already have that basic OpenQA. So if the basic OpenQA test would fail, then we would clearly see that check mark. Honestly, here, yeah, run clone mentioned. Wait, was that already? I'm not sure what that was doing. Yeah, the idea is exactly to have that, to have a clear check mark with like a green or red, which would prevent the pull request to be merged unless you overrule it. I mean, as an admin, I still say I want to merge.
There can always be a false negative in clone tests, and we
Yeah.
know some cases this happens. But at least it would hopefully trigger people to actually look at the failures before just clicking merge.
Yes, but I must say we are not quite there yet, because right now, even if a job would fail and maybe again you would have something like, I don't know, download OpenSUSE.org being down, then it shouldn't block your pull request indefinitely. And I'm not sure if just retriggering the test in OpenQA wouldn't immediately retrigger the check here in GitHub.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that can
So,
make it tricky then.
right, so we will have to think about it and work with it. Anton?
Yes. So, what exactly is the basic OpenQA test, and how does it relate to the code being changed? Also, like, how does it know to run jobs that are relevant to the code being tested? Also, how does it deal with the fact that we mostly edit stuff on OSD, and for configurations that are on OSD, like I'm actively working on multi-machine test that is not on O3, and I don't think that could be configured to run on O3, and doesn't have the even the resources, the the SAP binaries to run O3. How is that level relevant to my pull request? And if it fails, how can I disable it?
Right. So I'm trying to answer, I think there were like 4 questions. Let's start with what I think was the first one. So the first one is, how does that relate to the change code? The important part is the case. So you can see it here. What we do is we schedule a test, and what we schedule is with case steer pointing to the state of code from that pull request. This is why the OpenQA test is triggered with that test code and not the one from origin master. The second part is, what's the actual test that is generated. I selected a more recent test so that we can results. And what you can see here, it says GitHub, boot to snapshot. So this scenario is actually like one of the most simple ones that we could find, boot to snapshot. And
could you? Yes, let's stop there. Could you go back to the CI to the pull request?
To the change code? Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
The CI the pull request that triggered it. Could we see what it is about?
I'm pretty sure it's not about booting to the snapshot.
Exactly. So what does this provide us other than, okay, the Perl compiles?
Yes.
That's what you learned.
That were more like the most horrible problems, where when you introduce a change and then all the tests even fail to boot. Okay. That would be like the most severe impact. Of course, granted nowadays, because we have a lot of experienced contributors to all sorts of systems. I consider the chance for that to problem quite slim. But still, it would be the most critical scenario and also the most easy one to test first. So that's why we said at least this works. So, for example, let's assume you do changes that involve reading the schedule. Then we can see that the schedule can be evaluated. Wash?
Maybe the concern from Antonio could be if you would actually clone the test and rename it to sanity check, something like that, and then it would make more sense and wouldn't confuse people.
No,
Antonio,
no.
if that was your point.
So my concern is that it's another point of failure, and it has already failed in the past. So, and I don't see what it adds. It adds the fact that the Perl compiles.
And that the schedule can be
And the
evaluated.
schedule,
no, actually, we check the Perl compile already in static check, but you actually need to evaluate some part of the code to be valid, and that's the only evaluation happening as part of complete OpenQA job. Consider producing a dependency, like use super cool fancy module. Suddenly all OpenQA tests would fail because you forgot to include it in the mentioned dependencies. So it could happen that maybe as part of the CI it works, but not on our production.
Where would I mention those dependencies?
In the spec file within the same repo.
What spec? Like, this is for tests, not for running RPM.
Yeah, but the test needs some dependencies as well, like libnet SSH2 or something. Joaquin mentioned also good examples of where this could apply.
Apart from, could you show us, like, so this is the schedule. I'm trying to figure out what other things it's protecting me from. Like, could you show us? Do you have a demo failure, a demo bad pull request that this feature protects us from?
We had one from the original. I mean, we brought in this feature already many months ago. I would need to look that up further in the past. I think we wanted to trigger an explicit failure. Let me try to answer your other questions. So, for example, I mean, in this case, as a semi-proficient reviewer, I can already understand that, like, yeah, okay, so the change is only in test public cloud check register client. So this will not affect that scenario, right? I mean, it shouldn't. So that's why this this new feature could then be used to say, well, based on the template that we have there, based on that job, and clone it and set certain parameters, certain test variables, so that it actually covers that code. That's still up to the reviewers to understand, like, okay, if you're changing this code, what scenarios would it in? Yeah. Because I mean, it wouldn't be realistic to run all the tests as part of CI. That would be like thousands of tests.
Sorry if I'm monopolizing the discussion. If so, this I don't know how standardized are the workers. If I use in my Perl code, I do a use whatever.
Yep.
I add the Perl module that's in my system and on the OpenQA system I tested on, but it's not in our standardized. Does this catch it? Or does it need to be? As far as I know, unless the module is loaded, it won't catch it. My Perl is not that good.
Yeah, right. That's correct. So in a test module, right? Because the test module is only dynamically evaluated if it's actually loaded during test execution. Then that problem, if you never specified the dependency, wouldn't be caught by that basic syntax.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
You had more questions about, like, how does that relate to OpenQA SUSE QE, and I would like to mention that shortly, because I mean, OpenGA SUSE QE cannot be reached by GitHub. So we cannot trigger directly from GitHub to OpenGA SUSE QE. However, what could be done, that's, for example, I know from Yast development repositories, what they do is they reference an internal submit request from build SUSE QE. How is that possible? Well, you can do it the other way around by having an internal component, an internal active component that can look for, you could look for open pull requests on GitHub and then push the information there accordingly. So that would be okay. And you can build a bit more dangerous kind of bridges, but I wouldn't go there right now. And I think you had a fourth question, which I forgot, but still welcome to follow up with me on that later on. Right. So let me see what else is there. Oh yeah, there were there was recently pen testing done. I mean, there's always some pen testing going on to test the security of the certain. And there was one incident where we are using for some tests and internal test machines where we're using a compromised root password. Compromised as in it's on GitHub and it's actually not secret. But normally what we would have is something like, consider the Chemo backend. You would have virtual machines which are not directly accessible over SSH anyway, and even those are running only during the time when tests are executed and running. In some other cases where we're not using the Chemo backend but other backends, the test machines are maybe set up the same way, but they are within a broader, more reachable network, still internal, still connect secured behind a VPN and such, but still it's a good idea to think about how that could be made more secure. So we are currently exploring different ideas there, and potentially I would also come to some of you guys as test maintainers how we can improve patient, to fulfill the requests of our fellow colleagues cybersecurity. Yeah, batch commenting on all OpenGate jobs. That was another, I would say, success story of where we originally only planned to have a Spike solution, which turned out to be complete in the end. I know that many of you have already seen. I think that might have been the original. Many of you might have already seen allow batch commenting on test results, and then there's an according screenshot there. So if you have the test overview page of OpenGate, then there's a button right, just allowing you to add a comment on all current. Why is it important? Well, because we use that commenting feature to bring in bug references, labels, any special kind of notions for further automation. And in some cases, you want to apply the same on all in a batch fashion. So that's now why this is provided. Also over the UI, we have received some positive feedback about it. Let's see what's on the next page request. More machines, optional quick work up. That one I can also demonstrate. Yeah. So let's that have there's the according doc. I just need to find the coding section here for me. Oh yeah, dependency. That's what we talk about. So if you go to the documentation, then there is a new section about dependency pinning. The thing about parallel dependencies, you want to have client-server scenario, and now it's possible in all jobs within the same parallel cluster to be executed on the same worker host. For that, we have a bit more ideas. So that's why we wanted to provide the warning that this is a bit subject to change. However, let's say for debugging purposes, you're perfectly welcome. Use that flag to say, I need all my tests run on a single physical host with multiple worker slots, so that this cluster of jobs would only be picked up if there are enough free slots on that one physical worker, prevent any kind of inter-machine dependency, as in the other physical host need to be connected somewhat, and you don't know if it's in the same data center or if it's properly connected. So as I said, working purpose, you can do that. Of course, I know when I say that this is like a can be used temporary workaround, that yes, there will be certain situations where this will stay indefinitely on test. That's fine. You just need to be aware that there needs to be enough worker slots on a single worker host fit an entire. Normally shouldn't be a problem if you're just talking about like a cluster with 2 parallel jobs. But if you think about something bigger, then that might be an issue. So that's why the default behavior will be that whatever the admins provide, as in all machines connect, generally favorable. All right. With that, I would like to conclude the presentation worked on. If you're okay with that, then go to overview of what we had planned on level. So from our team wiki, that is progress of our projects QA wiki tools, how we work, I would like to show the top level view. And the top level view is actually still unchanged from the last time, because we still have that migration of setup within the SUSE data centers. Finish that, however, we are really nearing the end, so this is why taking long time to work on the long tail, where we have a lot of dependencies. I mentioned one example. Still need a server that we can tweak, offer OpenQA resources like the latest build under testing over and pick setup, so that also PowerPC testing can access those within the new data centers, not relying on going from Prague to Nuremberg and vice versa with TFTP. There are also some other machines still waiting to be properly connected and cabled and set up in the network. Those are the ones we're seeing all with lower priorities, all the urgent, higher, and normal priority setup. And these are really the points which are missing there, together with a bit more reliable monitoring and control over the hardware that we have. Think of monitoring the bandwidth or the throughput on networks. We had that in before, we don't have that yet from data center. So in some cases where we are investigating problems, that would really be helpful. Another point is we don't have yet access to all the DHCP servers in the station. So, trying to bring up a machine, nothing happens. Don't know what's happening on the switch. We don't have access to the power distribution yet. We don't have access to the DHCP server. We are relying too much on the IT group that solve problems which we could solve ourselves. So this is why I still see past as being open regarding them. The full version control awareness, we showed one example in before about instructing OpenCA from GitHub pull requests to trigger verification jobs and provide the according feedback. And then, as we mentioned, one of those jobs happens, how does that impact a pull request? Those are open points. Another open point is, for example, how to better version the schedule definition tests. That is all the modules that are to be executed, all the scenarios that are to be executed, and the products that you need as definition for triggering testing. And there had been different approaches popping up over the years. We want to provide streamlined way how to work with all distributions in general. We will provide probably a feasibility analysis, how to migrate also force audience distri. That's new, but we will not enforce that force audience distri must be using that new structure. So I would say that's a discussion that we will have if all the maintainers of that distribution want to do the change or stick to the old still supported way, which is perfect. Our main goal there is think of any new test that one might to come up with, that those new ones have a much easier inner way to come up with, which is also related to ideas of how to offer better, like, offer SUSE products involving OpenQA, because there can think about new tests to come up and not just old legacy. Hi, Anton. So this is where I see a relation for customers. Saga, which is what we have on our next backlog. So we have the ready backlog, which is the current one that cares about, and then after that. Now I would like to take a look in current backlog. Let's see what's there. So we have currently those 40 backlog, and let's start with new ones. So we have some reactive. There's host is down, services fail. There was a task identified from the retrospective. Come up with code diagrams. It's bike. So there was the idea, like, can we have better diagrams? Have newcomers, maybe also professional users understand OpenQA or the bigger OpenQA ecosystem, how all those pieces come together, and you might know, like, also is integrated part of bigger ecosystems. Talking about for example, you have build OpenQA, produce builds, then you have rapid providing event-based triggering, then you have OpenQA, then you have the test manager evaluating the result of the then feeding that back to build OpenQA, and a lot of maybe come up with some diagrams for some errors. What's currently workable, so that is related security report, which I mentioned, that there are some testing machines that are which are too easily accessible within the SUSE network. And there are different ideas how to address that. Well, we can replace the password. Not that easy, because it involves putting it in the right places, but in a secret way. There's just all that code is connecting. We could think about SSH key-based authentication, but same problem there. where do you store the private key when you're talking about when you're talking about transient test morning and trying afterwards, or we can actually try to make the SSH port on test accessible. That's one idea that we're trying to do there, firewall on the SRT. And there are also other examples related to it. You can see there's more task about setting up network and proc 2 as well as what else? The Open SUSE conference is coming up, so we also want to that opportunity to run an internal days workshops on the day before in the SUSE office. So that's what we currently plan. And if any one of you like, area, we would be happy to joining us, maybe for a chat, maybe also a workshop for a topic that you're interested in. Maybe you could help us. Maybe we can help you with the work on. Yeah, one idea I had recently that's actually about infrastructure, but still near to my heart. Yeah, we became responsible for more machines within the SUSE networks, not only related to OpenGA, but also, like, let's say, general for the department. And sometimes one can encounter machines which nobody uses for months, maybe for years, but they're still running and they're wasting power. And I think we can do much better than that. So what I want to do is show you there. Because I defined in according epic prevention of inefficient hardware resource use. And that means that we can identify machines which should be off but are not off, and then switch them off. Or maybe we can also incorporate that part of a scheduling, so that actually whenever there is a need for more hardware resources, you can also automatically bring them up. So think about OpenGA, multiple builds being scheduled, coming together, and maybe there are some hardware resources which are prepared to be used. Then the OpenGA scheduler can trigger a service which on those machines over IPMI control, and then as soon as they are ready, they would pick up their jobs. And after the QA work down, would switch off those. It's actually part of a bigger idea where we can interconnect with other services and share resources more, because there are often some requests like, hey, can we have an ARM machine or S390 for testing? And then most cases it's not a fully automated process to be able to give access to those hardware resources. The same goes with the build service. The build service sometimes has a big demand of hardware resources, sometimes very little, depending on the architecture and special requirements there. So we want to share those resources. And the one specific task that we're working on right now can detect which are marked as unused rectangles, like with a manually applied tag. We don't currently, but maybe those machines are still pingable, and then we can identify those machines. What else? Yeah, there's also current OpenGAIN also its independence securely. So that's also a time box task to identify like what would it mean if we actually want to provide all dependencies for force against, maybe including force against distribution, but from a pure SLE environment. What dependencies would be missing and what would we need to? And now we can think about the next service pack in SP7, so that we are early in the requirements analysis phase and like we identify those this list of requirements, can we bring those in full SUSE support if it's actually feasible and useful and provides enough return on it. What's currently in progress is in scenario definition instead of job group templates for all audience. So that's related to how you structure the test plan. And as I mentioned, there are already, for example, there's this source audience or job group repository, separate repository, and they're not directly interlinked, so you don't know exactly from a test like which version of the schedule or the code was I using in the open, and that could be combined. There's also from the kernel squad a nice solution about generating that from YAML definitions. And for longer, there is a definition which we already use. We just show the simple example, which is the example distribution. The scenario definitions. So this one defines the complete machine definition, complete product definition, and the complete job templates, however, in a most minimal example. And now the idea is, how feasible would it be to completely all audience user, or at least major parts, in that format, and how would it look like? If you're interested, you can take a look, because Peter already came up with nice examples, some corner cases which we might not have foreseen yet when we're just talking about a smaller scope, and also coming up with a conversion script which can rewrite the format to fit from one document to the other, and how that would look like. So if you're interested, then take a look there. All right. With that, I would like to bring it to an end. I would still hang around for some more minutes. The recording has finished, so you're happy to join me there. Besides that, I would like to announce for the next week is we have a lightning talks session organized by Live2One, and on our progress wiki page we have an Etherpad document where you can propose topics. We already have a single topic, and that means there's more room for more to present on the next week. I would be happy to more. Any ideas of you, if you have any lightning talk that you want to present, that you'd like to present to the usual audience of the workshop, or something that you see relate to that area, then you're very welcome. Bring that forward. Until then, thank you, and come.